Afternoon, guys. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. We just finished a modern trapping course out here over the last 4 days. We had a really good time, got some animals, learned a lot together, spent a lot of time just fellowshipping and hanging out and having a good time. So here's the thing. What I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of continue a little bit. I did a video last week prior to this trapping class on a minimal predator trapping kit. When I say predators, I'm talking about animals like coyotes, fox, bobcat. That was our minimal setup to go out and set a few traps at a time, come back to a base camp, grab another set of traps, and go back out. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to set up a minimal water trapping style kit for you and show you what I think that should look like. And then we'll continue on with that series and we'll look at a couple other things during this trapping as well. I've got a coyote sitting right here that's been fleshed out from over the weekend. I'm waiting for it to completely dry. And then I'm going to do a tanning video for you guys with a commercial tanning solution to show you how to tan and then break and smoke a coyote hide. So we'll get to that later on in the week if I can. I have a long hunter weekend this weekend, which is a pro bono weekend that we did attached to the 21st Century Long Hunter class when hunting season wasn't open and they learned to reload 12 gauge shells of black powder, use their single shot 12 gauge as muzzle loaders and those types of things. And then they're going to continue this weekend to learn how to use small game type traps, water sets and things like that. And we're going to combine that with a small game hunt because most small game is now open in Ohio for hunting as well. So we're gonna do a hunt trap weekend. We're calling the 21st Century Long Hunter weekend that starts on Friday. Between now and then, I'm gonna get this video taken care of and a tanning video taken care of if I can, guys. So I apologize that the videos aren't boom, 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 or at set times on set days, but I can't schedule myself that way because I have classes that I teach almost 2 to 3 weekends a month, but my season's coming to a close now and I'll be able to get a little bit more, upbeat with some of the videos and things like that as far as how often I post them. But I try to do the best I can for you guys. So let's talk about this minimal water trapping kit. Stay with me. Okay, so let's first discuss the animals we're trying to trap when we talk about water trapping in general. A lot of people would think immediately to beaver when you talk about water trapping. And beaver, obviously, are something you can trap around the water and they're very easy to trap. However, in the state of Ohio, you can't trap beaver until like December the 26th. And if you're trapping them anywhere but private property with permission or you're the landowner, it's basically a draw or a lottery to trap those beaver out of a wildlife area. Now, I am a nuisance trapper in the state of Ohio. I can trap beavers anytime on someone else's property if they are doing property damage and the property owner calls me and says, hey, come trap these beaver out of here. So I do have another business on the side where I do nuisance wildlife trapping as well. And so I get some animals that way as well. However, when we're talking about trap lines, I'm not talking really about beaver. I'm talking more about smaller game animals, looking at that survival type mentality. I'm looking at, the smaller game animals are easier to process and quicker to take care of. So we're talking about muskrat, we're talking about mink, we're talking about possum, we're talking about coon. All of those things live around the water and they're fairly easy to trap as well if you understand a few simple sets. Let's talk real quick then to the traps so that we understand how that correlates. What I would say is the 3 traps that I would mainly use in those areas, and again, some of this is dictated by Ohio law, which also dictates that a 220 conibear, which is about this big, all right, in spread for that X-style killing trap, has to at least be in water. And a lot of these animals we're talking about are water's edge type animals where you may trap them on the water's edge, but not necessarily in the water. Although a 220 can be used in the water, they're a heavier trap. There's a lot of things that you can use that are lighter weight if you're not trying to kill the animal on the spot and are easier to set and manipulate than a 220 conibear, which requires setters and things like that on the spot. They're a little more difficult to get animals out of. You really need a setter or a jerk bar of some kind or a rope that you're going to unset that trap with to get the animal out. And I like to do things as simple as possible. So I don't use 220s a lot of the time, unless it's for something like, a nuisance situation. Then I do use 220s, but for generality's sake, I don't carry them around. The traps I find that work really well around the water's edge are a 120 conibear, which is a smaller type conibear trap that has 2 springs. The 2 springs make it very easy to stabilize it in runs on log crossings and things like that, for small cubby sets, for mink, undercut bank sets, all those things these 120s work really good for, and they don't weigh a whole lot. You can carry 3 or 4 of these in a pack basket at a time to extend your line without adding a lot of weight, and they're very effective traps. The other ones that I carry quite often are these #1 coil spring type traps. Believe it or not, this will hold a raccoon. It's not the best trap for a raccoon, but it will definitely hold a raccoon. It will hold a possum. It will hold a mink. It's not too big, so if you get a smaller animal like a mink or a muskrat in it, it's less likely to damage that animal to their leg from trying to wiggle out of the trap and things like that than a larger animal, okay? So I don't use large traps around the water for that reason most of the time. The biggest trap I'll use is a 450 Minnesota brand, which I use for fox. I do use those around water sometimes, but these #1s are a good selection as well if you want a smaller trap and you're trying to trap smaller mammals, okay? And then the coon cuff. Greatest thing since sliced bread. Greatest trap ever invented, in my opinion, for just putting food on the table. You will catch anything that can get its feet in this trap to try to grab food out. I've caught everything on this trap, from possums to skunks to raccoons. I've even caught house cats in these traps before. So anything that can get his grubs inside there to pull bait out is going to get hung in one of these traps. They're very easy to set. 3 of them doesn't weigh a ton in your pack if you're doing them three sets at a time, which is generally what I try to do, 2 to 3 sets at a time, depending on the size of the trap. Now, peripheral equipment. So we've got our traps. Okay, we're going to take 1 of each of these, 3 of each of these, something like that. And along with that, we need a tool that we can dig so we can make pocket sets and things like that in the side of the bank. We need a pair of pliers so that we can manipulate things like pounding fence nails, pulling fence nails, so that we can twist wire if we need to, or undo a speed lock if we need to. And that's the main reason for carrying these pliers. Again, not a lot of weight for what all it will do for you. Those 2 tools will do most of what you need to do around the water the way I trap, okay? I have a few earth anchors here. In case I can't find a really great place to anchor that trap to, I'll drive an earth anchor in the ground if I need to. So I carry 2 or 3 of them extra. I carry a couple of extension cables here that I put. They're just an end-to-end cable with a loop on both ends. Really, really good for putting a speed lock into, to wrap around a tree, wrap around an exposed root, something like that. Or an extension if you need it for your chain that you can use with speed locks to get to a fence staple in the side of a tree or a root or something like that. Very simplistic stuff. I carry a couple of drowning cables with me that basically are the same thing. They're just longer as my extension cables are, but they have a reverse lock-on mechanism on them so that you can hook your trap to this and it can only go one direction down the line, and you would generally run the other end of that line into the water so that you would drown the animal. And what I do is I carry a couple of muslin bags with me, and I can fill those with rocks or dirt, wrap them with trapping wire or something like that to the other end of that cable, throw it out into the water. That's going to be heavy enough to keep an animal from getting back up to the top by swimming. We're not talking about beaver. We're talking about things like muskrat, mink, a small raccoon. This thing will definitely drown those type animals. You won't have to worry about it. For a beaver, you're going to need something a lot heavier than this bag. But for a smaller game type animal that doesn't have the strength to be able to swim this bag to the top with the trap attached to his leg, he's going to drown, no problem, okay? So those are the main peripherals, and then obviously the trapping wire, just a small roll of trapping wire. I have the same container that I carry most of the time that's got fence staples, nails, plates that you can hammer on top of logs so that you can set a 110 or a 120 conibear on top of the log, and a couple of extra speed clips and things like that, and then fence nails and straight nails. And we'll talk about some of these sets if you want to in a trapping series this season, if that's what you want to do. But you can refer to a lot of my older videos and see this information as well. So I talked a little bit about the fence staples. I just wanted to throw real quick in there. I'm sure you know what a fence staple is. It's just a U nail that they use for stapling barbed wire fence to a post. And those things work really, really well, and they're easily retrievable to hold your trap chains and things like that, or extension cables. And I like that because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use a toggle in large form, like some kind of a large limb or T-bar that I can nail a fence staple into, hook my trap to that. And if the animal gets trapped on that, he could possibly pull it a little ways, but sooner or later it's going to get hung up on stuff and he's not going to go far, but he's not going to sit there and destroy the area where you've made your set, so you can actually use it again if you need to. And then, simple, you know, I've got one bait right here called Fatal Attraction. That's more a meat bait. I have a lure called Marsh King here that I use for attracting in those type of predatory scavenging animals. It'll bring in mink, it'll bring in coon, things like that. And then just some crayfish oil. That's, you know, the favorite food of the raccoon is the crayfish. Same thing, it will bring in mink as well. So those smaller game animals, I carry something that I can use for a bait, something I can use for a lure, and then something that I can use to kind of bring them to the trap as well, a trailing oil like this crayfish oil. That pretty much makes it up. So if you've only got 3 traps in here, I mean, you really don't have a whole lot of stuff. Take these 2 traps out of the way, you've got this much stuff that you're throwing in a pack basket. You've hardly got, I bet you don't have 10 pounds of weight there, if you've even got, you know, more like 6 probably. Same thing with the pack basket, same pack basket I use all the time. I'm gonna throw this stuff in there. I'm gonna select 3 traps, toss them in, go, come back, get 3 more, go. That's what I'm gonna do. Now, as far as baiting these coon cuffs, it's just an old apple juice bottle that's got whole corn and cat food in it that's been laced with crayfish oil. All right, and that's what I fill up my coon cuffs with. Now, do you have to have this to use a coon cuff? You absolutely don't. You could put any type of animal that those animals would feed on inside that coon cuff. The guts of anything that you got done skinning or that you were done with meat bait wise, you could put in that coon cuff. However, I find stuff like this doesn't tend to gum up your coon cuff over time, doesn't tend to freeze inside the coon cuff. So it makes it very easy for those traps to work. And if you're trapping from a base camp, it's not hard to carry, you know, a bit of this stuff with you in a larger, like 5-gallon bucket, like you would your wax dirt and things like that that you'd use from base camp. Fill up a small container on the go, and you're ready to rock and roll. You know, this whole water trapping thing is just like I've always said in survival. It's about survival begins on the water's edge, and almost all animals go to the water at some point in time, and a lot of them like to hunt around the water. Raccoons, mink are both land animals that hunt a lot around water. Muskrats live in the water, obviously, like beaver do. And then obviously possums are scavengers. They're gonna go anywhere they can go to find food. But it's a very simple trapping kit. It's a very effective trapping kit. It works out very, very well if you're trying to do things in minimal fashion where you're going to walk a line from a base camp and maybe, like we talked about, either daisy chain out or walk some kind of a circle back to your camp. This is a very good kit for that. So listen, guys, I appreciate you joining me for this video today. And if there are more discussions you'd like to see on trapping in general, different types of sets you'd like to see, different types of traps you'd like to see utilized, how to use those traps effectively, things like that, I can do that. Just mention it in the comments, and I'll try to get some of that stuff worked out for you guys this season. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.